Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to teach you guys how to solve a 6x6. So a 6x6, again, for most big cubes, we're going to be reducing the big cube down to a 3x3 and then solving a 3x3 somewhat normally with some parity and whatnot. So basically how this is going to work is this big 4x4 chunk in here will be reduced to this center here, and each of these will be an edge, and each of the corners will still be a corner. So first, let's scramble this thing up. So as I was saying, the first step is to reduce this 6x6 down to a 3x3. Now, the first thing we're going to do is find two centers that we would like to solve first. So usually for beginners, that would be the white and yellow centers, as usually when you're solving a 3x3, you start with the white side. Now, in order to solve a center, we need to solve strips. And these strips are going to assemble in a certain position to form the whole center, which is going to be a 4x4 square. So we see this center is already almost formed. We just need, or this strip is almost already formed. So we just need this little piece here. And we can see that it's right here. So we'll align it and insert it just by doing a slice move, M move, whatever. And then we can insert this to the front, or we can just leave it where it is. So now that this is in the white center position, we can find another strip. So this strip right here, we need a edge thingy here, and we can insert that. And now we want to put these together, and we can choose to move this up or move this down. In this case, we're going to move this down. So we can just simply do another slice move or M move. Now this center is a little bit more tricky. We need to insert two. So we can see this corner here, or center's corner, and we can move it down without affecting any of the other centers by doing this. Move this so that it can match, and insert. Now we need another edge, or center edge. We see that this is of the same piece, but it won't belong in here. So what we're gonna have to do is find another one. So this one does go in, and we can do this. And now we have a strip. So we can insert it again. And of course, we'll do it once more with this center. We can move this up. We can find another piece. And these two are already kind of formed, so we can move it down. We want to be careful not to affect the center, which we kind of did. So we'll move this to the side, move both of these pieces back up. And now we can insert this strip. And there we have it, the white center. We can do something similar for the yellow center, except we want to make sure that we aren't affecting the center we already made, the white one. So let's work on, of course, the strips again. So we see that these two are here, and we want to form this strip here. We can insert this edge, or center edge, into here. And then we need to find another one of these pieces, which we can see that is right here. Move it up, and then we can insert this strip into where it belongs, which is going to be opposite the white, or here. So we can lift this up and do that. Now the next step is probably this strip. We can see that this is almost already done. We have this edge here, we can put that there. And then we need another corner. We can see this one, move it in, and then we can put it next to this edge so there's no funny like checkerboardish pattern going on. Next, we can work on this one, and as you can see, it's already in. That's not a big deal. We can simply move it out by moving up, move it over, and move it down. So now we need these two pieces. We can see that this piece can go in here, so we can just move that down. And finally, we need this piece, which can be this one. We can separate them like this, simply slice it out as there's no centers done on this edge or this ring. And then we can move this here, like that. And now we can insert it like we did previously. And for the final strip, we have these two already done. We see this corner, we can move it down. And where's the last one? We have this one that we can move up like this. And then, like always, we want to insert this strip. And now we have two centers done opposite to each other. So I suppose now is a good time to explain what we want. So for the next step, we want to do three edges next to white. So here, here, and here. And then we want to solve all of these four centers, and then finally solve this white edge. And now why that is because we want to solve these four edges without having to worry about looking at the white face or the bottom face. That way we can be a little bit faster and reduce some cube rotations. Now, this will be a little bit tricky, as once we have these edges done, when we're solving the edges, or any of these edges really, if we have one, we want to be careful not to affect that edge as we're solving the other two edges. So let's take a look at this. So I suppose for the first edge, it doesn't really matter what color it is. Now, I already see 2 orange pieces, in fact 3, so we can do the orange one first. Now we can move this edge here, without touching the center of course, and then we want to move this to the same plane, I suppose, as this top edge, so we can do it like this. And of course, all of this is going to be somewhat intuitive, so there's not going to be really any algorithms. Now, we want to match this edge to here, and how we want to do this is by slicing downwards, so that this edge is now at the bottom. We want to move the chunk that we want here, and then slice this edge back up. Now we have 2. Then, to find the other one, we see this one, which we can simply just do this. And finally for this edge, it's a little bit in an awkward position because we can't just slice it as it will be reversed. We can simply do a B2 to flip it to the right side, and then insert it. Now we have an entire strip of edges, which will be one edge in our reduced 3x3, and we can insert it into the white center. So now it gets a little bit trickier. We want to find the edge next to orange, and we want to construct it. So first, let's check out which color it should be. So we have 3x3, and if we align the cube like this, we see that this center or edge should be blue. So we'll start to find some blue edges. We see one here. We can do an F move to bring it to the top. And usually when we're solving a 6x6 like this, we want to move the solved edges to the back, so we have this slot empty, so we can manipulate it. And now to find another blue piece, I see one right here. We want to move it over and do a M move to bring it to the top. Now we want to find some more blue pieces. We see one right here. It's in the wrong direction, so we can simply do a D2 to bring it to the back and somewhat flipping it, and then we can insert it like we did before. And next up, we need the final blue piece, which we can find right here, so back here. And because none of these slots are done, we can simply do this. And as we did before, we slice this down to the bottom, move the edge back, and slice it back to the top. Now this might be a little bit confusing, but hang with me, do some practicing, and it will all make sense. Now for the last edge, we want it to be red, as the opposite to orange is red. So we see a red piece right here. We can simply do an F move because it's not affecting any of the edges here, like this. Now we want to find any other red edge, and we see one back here, but of course we can't do the good old D moves because there's already a solved edge here. But what we can do is adjust the solved edges so that the D slot is open, do the D move, and adjust the edges back. Now we see that the edge should be here, and the edge should be here, and we can just simply slice it up. Now this edge is also reversed. We can do a similar concept, do a D move, and then slice it back up. And our final edge is already here, so we can take it out without affecting any of the centers, slice it down, move this over, slice it back up, and insert it where it has to go. So make sure it's opposite orange and not blue, or opposite whatever color you've already done, so like this. And now we have 3 edges complete. We can start working on the 4 centers. So now we have to do the remaining centers. Now, how we're going to do this is, again, by making strips. However, making strips isn't so easy when you can't affect any of the edges. That's why we left this slot empty so we can use it. Now, what I mean by this is you can do U moves freely, and if you can do U moves freely, you can adjust the rest of the cube so you can do basically any move you want. Now, how we're going to start is by making a green strip, because most of the green is already done. So we can put a corner here, we see a corner. Again, if we want to adjust this face, we want to move it to the top, move it over, and move it back down. Now we can match this up here, so simply slice up. And in this case, because there's no other edges, we don't have to slice back. Now, I guess we can do this one. And by doing this, we have to move it down, because we don't want to mess anything up. We already did. So we can do this, and perhaps move it to here so we can manipulate it easier. Now we want to find an edge that goes here, or here. And we see these two are already paired up, so we can simply slice the whole thing down, and we have another slice of the center done, so we can just insert it. Now we can do this slice. Now we see that this piece can go down here, so we can simply slice it down. And we also see that this piece can go here, so once again, slice it down. And then this piece can go here, and this is a little bit harder because we can't really just move it. So we want to move it to center below the one we're using. So here, we want to move it here. And we don't want to mess up the centers we've already done, so move the slice that we just used back up. And we can slice this up. And then here we go. Now we can move this in. And the insertion method I'm using is moving it up, doing a U2, and then moving it back down. That way it won't affect anything. Now in the first center, it doesn't really matter because none of the other centers are done. But on the second, third, and fourth center, we want to use this method so we don't mess anything else up. Now finally, we have this strip of the center. And because this can't go directly in here, we want to move this down here. And because it's not messing anything up, it doesn't really matter. And now we can adjust this to our will. And because it needs to go here, we can rotate it and of course slice it up. Now for the final one, it's a little bit tricky because it's mashed up, but of course you can do the same thing. We slice it out, rotate the center or the strip, and slice it back in, making sure to slice everything back that we already did. And then we can just simply insert it. And now we have one center done. Now we want to do the next center. Now I prefer to do the one below it, so it would be this one, but you can also do the one above it. It doesn't really matter. So what we want is to find the center that's right here, and what we can do is align the cube to what rotation it is in right now. We can use a 3x3 because the centers can't change on that. And now we have white here and green up here, and we see that this one should be orange. So let's do the orange center next. We can do this strip first because it's pretty much already done. And we can move this one up, and we want to move it back down like this. Now we can insert this corner. We can see a corner here, and we want to move that up so that it matches. And now we already have one strip done. Next, we can do this one. So we want to insert a corner into here so that we can finish the strip. And then we want to do this one. So we want to rotate it and then insert it. Now that we have another strip, we can insert it into the correct center, so the orange one. And finally, we have the center two strips. We can use this one because it's already almost complete. We can simply slice it down, rotate it, and then put it back up. Now we want to insert this into here. And finally, this edge right there. We can simply move it down one, move it back up, and we want to insert it like this. Now we can insert this second to last strip, and we see this is already almost done for us, so we can simply insert the two, edges of the center. So this right here, insert, move it up. And then we have this one. We want to move it away from the center that we're solving, move it down, and do that. Now we have another strip. We can simply insert it. And there we have it. Now we have two centers. Now we have to do the remaining two centers. Now we can't do the method that we did previously because there's not a third center to manipulate with. And now, because of this, we have to use a little bit of an algorithm, not really an algorithm. So basically, we first have to solve as much as we can without using the algorithm. And now that's pretty easy. We see that this center is supposed to be blue because red can't be right next to orange. And what we can do is we want to move this strip with 3 blues into this strip with only 1 blue. Now what we can do is overwrite this strip, rotate it, and move it back down so that we actually have, I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but we're basically moving this strip into the top center by overwriting a strip with already stuff that we want, rotating it, and putting it back down. Now it will kind of make sense more as you do it, but so we need to do this next strip here. We want it to go here, so we want to override the one that's opposite to it, so here, and move it down. So after we've done all we could bulk-wise, so like bulk moving all of the edges around, we can now do more intricate movements with the algorithm that I talked about. So if you want to move a corner here up to here, we can do this. So lift this up, move it over, so to the direction that it's not already is. So if we do this and move it, it will go back down, so we don't want that. We want to move it the other way so that we can lift the other side up, move it back, put it down, move it over, and put that down. Now what that'll do is it will swap this corner and this corner. Now we can do the same thing with the edges, I guess. So we can move this up, and now we want to swap these two, so we can lift this up. And again, we can't move it this way because it'll be right next to each other. We want to go the other way, lift it up, go back, put it down, and go back again and put it down. And now it swapped our two edges. Now I might have done some also rotations here, but it doesn't really matter. So now we want to move this over here, and we can do a similar algorithm, lift it up, and we don't want them to be right next to each other, so we want to turn it the other way. And now we have two remaining. Do the other edge. Again, we don't want it to be right next to each other, so we want it the other way. And for the final center, we can do a similar thing. And for the centers, you actually do want it to be right next to each other because, well, it will go back down if it isn't. And there we go. Now we have all of the centers complete, and you can do some, slight aligning, and most of it will be done. So now we have to finish this last bit of the edges that we didn't do, and we see the two pieces right here. We can put them right next to each other, and we want to slice this over, so like this. Now the centers won't really matter because at the end we can just slice them all back. So now we have this right here, we can slice that over, and for the final edge we see this. Now we can't slice this over because, well, it's the opposite direction and it won't work. What we can do is do a flipping algorithm on this big edge. And now the flipping algorithm goes something like this. And now that will flip this edge, and we can insert it. So the next step is to put this edge in here, and it's pretty simple. You can take the edge out, and we want to move this slot up, move it over, and move the slot back down. And now we have basically the entire white cross done. So next step we want to do is solve two edges that are right next to each other. So we can do these two, so orange and blue and red, or we can do these two, or these two. It doesn't really matter. I'm gonna choose so the orange and blue edge and the blue and red edge. So we see that this is almost already done, so we can of course insert this. We can slice over, and then we can, find the other edge maybe. So it's right here, we can slice it in. And now we have this entire edge done. Next, we want to do the blue and orange edge. So we see a little bit of it right here. And then we can get the other part of it here, match it up, insert another part of it, and you kind of get the point. So we're just gonna repeat this and slicing the edges back and forth until we have the two edges that we need. And of course, the flipping algorithm is always there if you need it. And there we have it. Now we have these two edges. Whenever you finish an edge, you want to make sure to move it to the top face simply by lifting it up, putting it over, and moving it back down. That way, when you're slicing the centers back and forth, you don't mess up the edges you've already done. The next step is to do two of any other edges. So preferably they're yellow edges, so it has yellow or any other color. And we can do the yellow and green one because it's already almost done. And we see a part of it here, so slice it back. And this one needs a little bit of flipping, so there we go, and insert it. Now we can move this to the top. The next one we can do, I suppose, is the yellow and red one, so we can slice it over. We want to flip this so it can go here. And finally, the last piece would be up here. You can insert this. So we can insert it already flipped. That way we don't have to insert it like this and then flip it. Instead, we can just insert it the other way around and make it right. So now we have this edge here. We can move it back to the top. And there we go. Now we have 2 miscellaneous edges and then 2 of the edges that we want. Now we can slice everything back to where it should be. And now here, if you use F2L, you can simply do the 2 edges that we already did. So we have the blue and red edge, and we see the blue and red corner. We can simply use F2L to pair it up and insert it. And then of course we have the other one. However, if you don't do F2L, you can simply insert the corner first, and then insert the edge using whatever method you prefer. Now we have these 2 large chunks done. We can focus on the remaining edges. So when you're here, it doesn't really matter what order you do the edges in. However, I already see this one that's pretty much done, so we can insert this right here. And now we want to do the remaining edges the 4x4 edge pairing way, where we move the slot out, we flip this, and move the slot back. So we want to move this slot over, and we want to flip it so that this edge is here, and then we can slice it back. So we flip it. Now the edge we want is in the location that we want it to be, and then we slice it back. Now it may seem that the edge is upside down right here, but it doesn't really matter because when we slice it back, we'll actually be flipping it to some degree. Now we can do this one. So we see these 2 edges can go into these 2 slots, and we can actually do these together. So we can move this over and move this slot over. We can flip these so that these edges are where we want it to be. And again, they may seem reversed, but when we slice it back, it won't really matter. And now for this one. So you see that this piece can go in here. We want to slice this over, flip it, and slice it back. Now you see this piece, it's already flipped, which we don't want because, that will interfere with it. So we want to flip it first, move the slot over, flip it again, and insert it. Now all of the edges should be complete. Now, when you're solving the edges, you may run into a scenario something like this, where 2 of the outer edges are flipped. Now, this will be parity, and there's a 50% chance that this may occur. And what you want to do when this happens is to move the parity out and execute the algorithm shown above. And that will fix the parity, like this. Now, it may also mess up some of the other things on the top layer, but because we haven't solved to there yet, it doesn't really matter. Now, you can solve the last 2 slots using whatever method you wish. I'm just going to do F2L for the sake of video time. And there we have it. Now, the bottom layer should be complete. Now, the next step is to solve the top layer, and of course, you can solve it using whatever 3x3 method you wish. You can do OLL, PLL, whatever. And so in this case, I'm going to do like that. And now the top layer should be complete. But there's another chance you may run into another type of parity, OLL parity. So when you see that one edge is flipped, then that would be OLL parity. Now, it's pretty easy to solve. Once again, follow the algorithm above if you need it. And there you go. That one edge should be flipped, and if you need to do any more OLL adjustments, that should be pretty simple. And for the final step, we can use whatever method we want to solve the last 2 edges, and in this case, I'm going to do some PLL. And there we go. But before we finish this tutorial, there's one more type of parity. It's called PLL parity when 2 edges are switched. Now, PLL parity may look something like this, or there may be some other state changes such as, this is why you don't do M moves on 6x6. So it may look something like this, and if you know PLL like me, you'll know that this state is physically impossible to achieve in a normal 3x3. Now what you can do is use the PLL parity algorithm. Now the algorithm goes something like this. And now this state should be solvable, so we have whatever U-perm algorithm we want to do. And there you go, that should be the 6x6 solved. And so that's all for today's video. I know it was a little bit long and perhaps a little bit confusing, so if you need any help, please let me know in the comments and I'll try to respond really quickly so you can solve your 6x6. Now, that's all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Goodbye!